Hello and a very warm welcome in this quick review and recent updates in community medicine session. I'm Dr. Mukhmohit Singh. I know very well that PSM it's a very dull subject, a dry subject, a boring subject, and we are all scared of this subject because there are so many new updates and recent updates keep on happening. In fact, these are the updates which make our subject very lively and dynamic and very crucial for your exams also. So you might be appearing for your foreign medical graduate and screening exams or PG entrance exams, NEET exam, whatever it is, recent updates are very important and they play a pivotal role in the preparation for your exam as well. So in this session will be roughly around 2 hours. In these 2 hours, I will be trying to do recent updates and some of the updates which have been incorporated in your Park 26th edition. Towards the end of the session, I will also be discussing what all important topics or chapters you need to revise 2-3 days before your exam. So let us, in name of God, Bhagwan ka naam leke, let us start with the 32 topics I have gathered for discussing in recent updates in community medicine. So let us take topic number one, that is the very high yield and very hot topic and frequently asked topic, that is COVID-19 infections. So first is variants of concern and variants of interest. What is the difference between them? The variant of concern is something bigger. It has more transmission, it has more virulence, and it is a bigger public health problem on a global base. We have four variants of concern, that is alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. The variants of interest, these are the variants which are existing in nature. They are different from the initial COVID-19 viruses and they are there in some of the countries, but they are not a major public health threat on global basis. They are variants of interest. The variants of interest would be epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, and kappa. So for you, just to remember for your exam, take it easy that delta variant is from India. And then you have a kappa variant which is from India, and that's all you need to remember for your exam. And also please remember what are the four variants of concern: alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. Second point, what is the difference between symptomatology between COVID infections and influenza? We all know that influenza is characteristically, there is fatigue, body ache, headache with runny nose, stuffy nose, and sore throat. Whereas these symptoms, they are not very frequently seen in COVID-19 infections. They are the atypical or less frequently seen symptoms, that is body ache, headache, or runny nose. The characteristic feature in COVID-19 infections, I think we all know, is fever, cough, fatigue, shortness of breath, and loss of taste or smell. Next, topic number 2. So we are going to talk about some of the updates in vaccine development for COVID-19 infection. Please note that this whole video is for educational purpose only. You please seek medical advice before getting the vaccine. The guidelines discussed in this session are subject to change to any new policy and or updates by the Government of India. Vaccine development is as dynamic as seasons and it is supposed to change every time. Technically, for your MCQ exams, you need to learn that there are 5 broad categories of vaccines in COVID-19. We can either have viral vector vaccines, mRNA vaccines, killed vaccines, the DNA vaccine, or the protein subunit vaccines. Out of these 5 vaccines, 4 vaccines are currently used on a global scale. 4 vaccine types, that is viral vector vaccine, mRNA vaccine, killed vaccine, and protein subunit vaccine. DNA vaccine Zydus Cadila has not shown promising results till now, but yes, in future we might have some other researches as well. For your MCQ exam, just remember these 4 out of 5 vaccine types. We can have Johnson Johnson, Gamaleya, Sputnik, Oxford, AstraZeneca, or Covishield vaccine. mRNA vaccine example is Pfizer or Moderna, Bharat Biotech Covaxin, and protein subunit is Novavax. MCQs on these. The viral vector vaccine uses what as the vector? The vector that is used is adenoviruses. They are using adenoviruses. Usually in all the viral vector vaccine, we do need an emulsifier. Emulsifier is present, and usually in the Covishield vaccine we have polysorbate 80 as an emulsifier, and that is what is important for the whole vaccine system to get into the body and to keep the whole molecule contained. Then the mRNA vaccine or the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine, these vaccines have a lipid nanoparticle. And the lipid nanoparticle is what makes these vaccines as pretty expensive and kind of unstable at lower or higher temperatures. So they need a very strict temperature maintenance. The killed vaccine, Covaxin, is relatively stable vaccine. It is inactivated killed vaccine. And then we have new upcoming, that is Novavax. Talking from the Indian perspective, on 13th of May 2021, the government of India announced that we will be having, like that's a projection, that they will be having 216 crore vaccine for the whole Indian subcontinent, for the all Indian population. So which will be enough. So now that those 216 crore vaccine doses, they will not be from a single vaccine, they are from a basket of vaccines. So Covishield, Sputnik and Bharat Biotech nasal vaccine, these all are three types of a viral vector vaccine. Covishield, we already know it's a viral vector vaccine based with the adenoviruses. Sputnik vaccine. Talking about Sputnik vaccine, Sputnik, the Gamaleya Institute from Russia, they also announced that there will be a Sputnik light vaccine. Like in beer, we have some beer strong and beer light. We have a Sputnik strong and a Sputnik light. So jokes apart, Sputnik Light gives us 80% efficacy, whereas the Sputnik conventional, that is the Sputnik V vaccine, it gives us 92% efficacy. But we have a Sputnik V, which is the main Sputnik vaccine, and we have a Sputnik Light, which is a single dose Sputnik vaccine. Then we also have a killed vaccine, that is Covaxin. It is killed inactivated vaccine, we just now saw. Subunit vaccine by BioE subunit vaccine, and we also have Novavax. What are these subunit vaccines? The subunit vaccines are like, you can have a lot of spike proteins everywhere. So we take all the spike proteins, put them into a syringe and then insert into the body. In the body, then there is immune response, there is antibody production, and next time when the COVID virus comes, then there is like more amount of antibody and immune response. So the Novavax is given as 2 doses, 3 weeks apart. It is a spike protein subunit vaccine. Then there is a mRNA vaccine, Genova. So now what happens is, I already discussed with you that the mRNA vaccine, they are there with the lipid nanoparticle. The nanoparticle needs a strict temperature maintenance of minus 20 degrees Celsius, and it is kind of expensive to manufacture. Genova vaccine comes with the peculiarity, it comes with a special feature that it will be stable at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. And that is the reason Pfizer Moderna vaccine were not very successful in the Indian context, because we did not have a minus 20 degree cold chain maintenance. Genova can be used in the Indian population because it is kind of stable. 2 to 8 degrees Celsius is the temperature maintenance, and we have good hopes on this vaccine. This is like a bright kid in the boys, and that's what is Genova vaccine. Coming to topic number 3. We are going to talk about the biomedical waste management guidelines on COVID-19. Couple of questions can come on this. So if you're talking about the biomedical waste, it can happen at 3 different places. Either the patient is in COVID ward, or the patient is in home care isolation, or the person is in a temporary unit like vaccination center or the immunization center or the testing center. So biomedical from those areas. So we are not talking about the biomedical from testing or the vaccination centers, because that is dealt elsewhere. We are going to talk about the COVID isolation facility, that is the hospital, and the home care facility. So let us talk about the easy one first. We are going to talk about the COVID patient biomedical waste management from isolation facility, that is from the hospital. In a hospital, there is yellow category, red category, blue category, and white category. Yellow category is for all infectious things. Blue category is for all glass. White category is for sharps and metals. And red category is for all plastic. We already know this. Now, in a COVID hospital, please note that all the material, all the general solid waste would be waste comprising of wrappers of medicine or syringes, fruit peel off, leftover food, plastic plates, disposable food plates, empty bottles of disinfectant, discarded paper carton, empty juice bottle, either from the patient or relatives, whatever it is, everything has to be categorized as general solid waste. The yellow category would include used masks, very important. Shoe cover, head cover, disposable linen gowns. Please note that COVID patient use masks, toiletries, everything is yellow category in a hospital, COVID hospital. The red category would include PPEs, all the personal protective equipments like goggles, face shields, splash proof apron. These are the plastic aprons. So hazmat suits, which are not very frequently used in many hospitals right now, and nitrile gloves, these all are into the red category. Blue category is for glass or broken ampoules, and white category is for sharps and metals, the standard answer for biomedical waste. Okay. In case the patient is in home, so in a home care facility, again, please note that this is a home care facility. Now, in home care, we don't have yellow category, red category, blue category, white category. So, in home care patient, in home care COVID case, all the general solid waste is collected. All the general solid waste is collected from the kitchen, waste food, patient leftover food, patient water bottles, Tetra packs by suspected quarantine or COVID patients also. Everything is general solid waste. It goes into the solid waste. Very frequently, students mess up with this. So don't get confused. What are you going to throw as infectious waste? Infectious waste, everything. It could be your red category, blue category, white category. We cannot categorize at home level. So we ask them to put in a single category, that is yellow category. So yellow category in home care, in hospital, yellow, red, white and blue all are different. In home care, it is simple yellow category or it is a general solid waste. Okay. So the yellow category would be syringes, date expired or discarded medicines, empty ampoules also, masks, gloves by COVID patient by the health staff, which also includes the the urine bags, the blood bags, body fluid, body soaked cotton, anything, everything goes into a double layered more than 50 micron yellow bag or a yellow category. So please note that mask and gloves used by persons apart who are caretakers of COVID-19 patients, their mask is not taken as yellow category. They just need to dispose that mask safely 72 hours prior to disposal, cut the threads and put them into general category waste. I would also like to reiterate the point that all these solid waste bags, either from home or from COVID isolate facility, they should be sprayed with sodium hypochlorite solution and then be handed over to the authorized waste collector. Yellow colored bags should not be used for general solid waste. In case in a hospital feces or excreta are there and the patient, COVID patient, has done excreta on the bed, then the diaper or the cloth or the bed sheet is directly disposed in the yellow category as normal. In case the patient is using bedpan, the feces material will go into the sewage category and the bedpan should be cleaned with 0.5% chlorine solution. So that's all about the biomedical waste management of COVID-19 infection. You should be knowing what is COVAX, COVIN, EVIN. COVIN, I think we already know. COVIN is a mobile application on which we are booking our dates and booking our appointments for COVID vaccination. What is EVIN? EVIN is Electronic Vaccine Intelligence Network. EVIN is it's a software to manage all the vaccines in our country. Then we have COVAX. COVAX is a global coalition. It's a global organization. It's a global access where we have gathered all the vaccines together so that countries which cannot afford to purchase vaccine, they should also be given the COVID vaccine, because we think that COVID cannot be stopped in one country until and unless we stop COVID everywhere in the world. And to stop COVID everywhere in the world, everybody needs to get a vaccine. So that is what this whole COVAX coalition means about. Next and last point is, very frequently people ask me like what are the contraindications to these vaccines. So the Covishield or the Covaxin, they do not have any particular contraindication apart from the one and only and major contraindication, that is anaphylactic reaction to these vaccines previous time or any of the constituents of the vaccine. So for as far as constituents of Covishield is concerned, I already told you we are using L-histidine. This is the main amino acid which is the component of the Covishield vaccine. Then we have magnesium chloride hexahydrate, which is one of the stabilizers that are there. Polysorbate 80, which is one of the emulsifiers. Then we have ethanol, sucrose and sodium chloride. These all are stabilizing, like the salt and the sugar. They stabilize the whole food ingredient, and the same manner for Covishield to be stabilized, we use ethanol, sucrose, sodium chloride, EDT and water for injection. So in case a person is having any allergy or known allergies to any of the constituents of these vaccine, in those cases the vaccine should not be given. Apart from this, if you have pollen allergy, if you have some other XYZ allergy, we can safely give Covishield, but we need to watch for at least 15 to 20 minutes, 30 minutes to be on safe side after the post-vaccination. In case you're talking of the Covaxin, we are using, this can be your MCQ, we are using NIV 2020-770 strain. Alongside, we are using other ingredients as aluminum hydroxide. We are also using imidazoquinolone. These may act as adjuvants to the effect of the vaccine, and they are used for stabilizing these vaccines. So that's all about the COVID infections. The next one is about tuberculosis. Next topic is about tuberculosis. 24th of March 2021. Of course, every year 24th of March is taken as the World TB Day. The theme for World TB Day, it's time to end TB. The clock is ticking. This is the World TB Day theme. So on 24th of March 2021, the government of India also released an NTEP program, also released the India TB report. Of course, it's a 300-page document. We don't want to go over the document again. It's not required for your exam, but you should be knowing that in year 2020, we had 18.05 TB notification cases. This number of cases is fairly lesser than the previous cases. Of course, there could be two reasons for it. One, that NTP program is doing very nice, or there could be also the second reason is that because of COVID-19, we had so many lockdowns, probably the TB notification came down. So whatever it is, you need to remember this number. Total, I'll be telling you 4 points in TB for you to remember. So point number 1 is about the data. Point number 2 is about the targets. The NTB WHO target, beta, you need to remember these 4 points. So second point we are discussing, the NTB target by WHO says that we have to end TB by year 2035 with 95% reduction in the deaths and 90% reduction in the incidence. So 95% reduction in the TB deaths and 90% reduction in TB incidence and zero catastrophic cost. Because the WHO said end TB by 2035, the Sustainable Development Goal said that we are going to end TB by 2030, because if we do it by 2030, then only the WHO will do it by 2035. So to decrease TB or to finish off TB menace by 2030, the SDG defines target as 90% reduction in the deaths and 80% reduction in the TB incidence. So if you cannot remember the WHO, that's fine. At least make sure this is important, beta. You should be remembering the SDG targets. Okay? Because the SDG said that we will finish off TB by 2030, the Indian context, that is the NTP, National TB Elimination Program, they said we will finish off TB by 2025. So if you can remember the SDG targets, that's fine, but do not forget the Indian target. Indian target is to finish off TB menace in our country by year 2025 with more than 90% reduction in the TB deaths and 80% reduction in the TB incidence and reducing the catastrophic cost to zero. Point number 3 about diagnosis of TB. Third point. So one is for TB diagnosing, we are using sputum. Alongside the sputum, we are also using NAT. NAT stands for nucleic acid amplification test. We are doing universal NAT. What do we mean by universal NAT? Universal NAT means for every case of TB suspect, we are doing sputum and we are doing NAT. Based on the NAT, either the patient may be categorized as rifampicin resistance found or not found. So once the patient is sputum positive, we do NAT, we are going to start the first line treatment. This is a new update now, that the first line LPA, this is not NAT. NAT will tell you about rifampicin resistance. The first line LPA, first line probe assay, it tells you about the isoniazid resistance. Now, see, what happened was when the program started, we were doing sputum. Then lately, 4-5 years back, we put NAT into the system, and now we are doing universal NAT for everyone. Now, after universalization of NAT, now next in line is first line LPA, which is incorporated into the system. So in case the rifampicin resistance is not detected, we still subject the case to first line LPA, that is isoniazid status. In case isoniazid resistance is not detected, and then the patient is going to continue with the first line treatment. But in case there is isoniazid resistance, then we have to do the second line DST, second line LPA, and a liquid culture DST also. And then we find out what is the level of resistance. Are we getting it? So what I want to say is, beta, that you just have to understand that all the cases of TB suspect, we are doing sputum and NAT, and then we start with the treatment. In case the NAT result is rifampicin sensitive or no resistance, in those cases we again subject to isoniazid testing also. So it's kind of a thing that maybe you can understand that to all TB suspects we are doing sputum and NAT and FLLPA also. Are you getting it? So, but yes, FLLPA is not done in across all the districts across Pan India, but it will very soon be. But currently we are doing NAT and sputum for everyone. NAT is universal under the program right now. So in case the rifampicin resistance is detected, then again we are doing first line LPA, that is isoniazid, and we are doing liquid culture DST to find out whether the patient has only isoniazid resistance or isoniazid and rifampicin, or like any other drug resistance, polydrug resistance, and then we will give them the treatment accordingly. So take home message in this, take home message is that there is a universal NAT now done, and based on this we will define what the treatment is. In case it is a child, the mainstay of diagnosing tuberculosis in children is chest X-ray. Sputum does not have an initial role. So if the chest X-ray is suggestive of tuberculosis, in those cases we will do CB-NAT. If the chest X-ray is normal, either the patient is having extrapulmonary TB or the child is having something else apart from tuberculosis. So technically speaking, it is only based on the chest X-ray. Chest X-ray positive, go for CB-NAT. Chest X-ray negative, we don't go for CB-NAT. Are we okay with this? In case the CB-NAT comes as CB-NAT negative, now is the utility for skin test, that is tuberculin test also. If the tuberculin test is positive, probably it is a clinically diagnosed TB case. In case the skin test is negative, the NAT test is negative, then we have to look for alternate cause. So this is what you need to remember for TB diagnosis. Coming to the TB treatment. TB treatment, please remember, it has been asked so many times, it may be asked again, that what is the drug schedule for the previously treated or the new treated case. It is the same treatment, 2 months of HRZD plus 4 months of HRE. H is isoniazid, R is rifampicin, Z is pyrazinamide, E is ethambutol. So 2 months of HRZD plus 4 months of HRE. In case it is all oral H mono, that is only isoniazid resistance, or a polydrug resistance, then we are giving 0 regime for 6 months. And in case you can remember, also I would suggest you to remember the treatment for the multi-drug therapy or the rifampicin resistant only therapy. We have a shorter MDR or all oral longer MDR. This is a new update. This is a new update about all oral longer MDR regime, 18 to 20 months of bedaquiline plus levofloxacin, linezolid, clofazimine, and cycloserine. So these are the all oral MDR regime which you need to remember for your exam. Coming to the last portion of this TB program, last part of this TB program, please also remember that under the TB program, there are some of the newer initiatives which you can remember, like active case finding, intensified case finding can be there. Then we have some other things like bidirectional screening of TB with COVID and TB screening with influenza-like illness and severe acute respiratory illnesses. TB screening is bidirectional. Couple of times many students ask me about the BCG vaccine also. 4 things you need to remember in BCG vaccine. One is that BCG vaccine prevents against which tuberculosis? BCG vaccine prevents against a severe form of TB, or it prevents the morbidity and mortality for primary tuberculosis. The BCG laboratory in Chennai from Tamil Nadu, it uses the Danish 1331 strain. The dose of BCG in a child who's newborn, it is 0.05 ml. The dose is 0.05 ml if the child is given a BCG vaccine within 4 weeks of birth. In case we are giving after 1 month, of course within 1 year, then the dose is 0.1 ml. Otherwise, at birth, the dose is 0.05, just because of the fact that the skin is very soft and very thin. So in case you are giving an intradermal injection in the skin, there are chances that you are injecting the drug, you are injecting the vaccine into the subcutaneous or even the intramuscular tissue, which may cause some lymphadenopathies or something like this. So the next topic number 5 we are going to take up is the NACO program, National AIDS Control Program. 4 things you need to remember. One is changes in the ART. So what happened is in part 26th edition also there is change that the ART is now revised. The antiretroviral therapy for HIV is now revised. The preferred regime that we are giving for HIV is tenofovir TDF plus lamivudine, that is 3TC, plus dolutegravir DTG. That is the preferred regime. The alternate regime is the previous regime, that is tenofovir, lamivudine and efavirenz TLE regime. For children, it is abacavir plus lamivudine plus dolutegravir. For neonates, it is zidovudine plus lamivudine plus raltegravir or lopinavir ritonavir boosted combination. So this is the new updated ART. This is the first line. The second line, in case the first line regime is not working, there is failure in the first line regime, then we shift over to the second line. So for your MCQ exams, at least you should be remembering the first line ART. Second point in HIV, second update. The second update is pertaining to the post-exposure prophylaxis. Earlier in post-exposure prophylaxis, we were giving tenofovir plus lamivudine plus lopinavir ritonavir boosted combination. But now this is taken as alternate combination, alternate regime. We now have a preferred regime. The preferred regime for post-exposure prophylaxis in HIV is tenofovir plus lamivudine plus dolutegravir. That's the same regime for ART. Tenofovir, lamivudine and dolutegravir as single fixed dose combination, single tablet. For children age more than 6 years or weight more than 20 kgs, we are giving zidovudine, lamivudine and dolutegravir. And children who are weight less than 20 or their age is less than 6 years, in those cases we are giving zidovudine plus lamivudine and lopinavir ritonavir boosted combination. This is the post-exposure prophylaxis to be started best within 72 hours, to be continued at least till 1 month, that is 28 days. That's all old story, that these have to be continued for 28 days. This is the Government of India letter dated 2nd of June 2021. The PEP has been revised. So we already have discussed about the post-exposure prophylaxis, that tenofovir, lamivudine and dolutegravir. 2-3 points about cotrimoxazole preventive therapy. CPT, cotrimoxazole preventive therapy, includes 800 mg of sulfamethoxazole and 160 mg of trimethoprim, which is a double strength tablets. These tablets have to be started when the CD4 count is less than 350 cells, and it will be stopped when the CD4 count is more than 350 on 2 occasions 6 months apart, with a definite ascending trend of the CD4, increasing trend of the CD4 counts, and that the patient is not in stage 3 or stage 4 WHO HIV stage 3 or stage 4. In case we are talking of the isoniazid preventive therapy, the IPT should be started to all children age more than 1 year. To all children, along with ART for all children living with HIV or people living with HIV after ruling out TB, and all HIV positive pregnant female regardless of their gestation age. So isoniazid preventive therapy and CPT have to be given to all cases. The FLART, that is the new ART, is available at all the ART centers across our country. The ART plus centers and the Center of Excellence, they are taking care of the alternate FLARTs and the SLARTs, that is the second line ART drugs, and of course the third line as well. So a lot of times I get this doubt on 2 important issues in HIV. So just to clarify, it's not an update, it's just a clarification again, that what about the about the vaccines in HIV cases. Please remember, HIV is immunocompromised status. So patients who are immunocompromised, to those patients you are supposed to give them measles vaccine, any vaccine like DPT vaccine, influenza vaccine or whatever vaccines. So in case the HIV patient is immunosufficient, the CD4 count is appropriate, it is not less, and the patient is not symptomatic for HIV, please, we are supposed to give all the vaccine, live vaccines and kill vaccine. In case the patient is immunocompromised, in case the patient is having CD4 count less than 200 cells, or if the CD4 count is like the percentage is less than 15% of the CD4 number, expected CD4 number, in those cases we are not supposed to give the live vaccines. Next is regarding ART or ATT, which will be started first. So we are supposed to start ATT first in cases of HIV and TB co-infection. ATT started first because of risk of immune reconstitution, inflammatory syndromes, because the immune status starts building up. So there might be some reactions, hyper reactions related to that better immune status. To negate that, we always wash off the TB bacilli first and then we start with the ATT. Next is coming to point number 6, that is National Leprosy Eradication Program, NLEP. The National Leprosy Eradication Program takes care of leprosy. We all know that leprosy can be of two types. We can have a paucibacillary or a multibacillary. Very frequently you ask me question that what is the treatment. Please note that there is a 3-drug regime for both, for paucibacillary and multibacillary. I repeat, the same 3 drugs will be useful in pauci and for multi. The pauci people will take for 6 months and the multi people will take for 12 months. Rifampicin and clofazimine, it is given as supervised dose every month, and then dapsone and clofazimine is continued again for the whole month. So for adults, clofazimine is daily 50 milligram. For children, it is 50 milligram on alternate days. For children less than 10 years of age, we give them depending on their weight bands also, clofazimine is given twice weekly. So for adults, it is daily, for children alternate day, and for children less than 10 years or less than 40 kilograms, it is twice weekly. But the same 3 drugs will be working for leprosy. Apart from the treatment schedule, the update is also there in the indicators of leprosy. The indicators of leprosy have been categorized as essential indicators, quality indicators, and additional indicators. Whatever it is, you don't need to remember the whole list, but at least please remember, you cannot afford to forget these 4 indicators. The ANCDR, annual new case detection rate, the grade 2 disabilities per 10 lakh population, the treatment completion rate and prevalence rate. Now, I would like you to bring your notice that there are 2 types of grade 2 disabilities. So one is rate of new cases with grade 2 disabilities per 10 lakh population per year. Then there is also proportion of grade 2 disabilities among new cases. Next is point number 7 about influenza. Influenza, I know we have some similarities with COVID-19 and some differences, but there are vaccines, peculiar features for influenza. So the vaccine for influenza, it has peculiarity that it is year specific. Every year we need to change the influenza vaccine because the influenza virus changes every year. And also the influenza vaccine is a region specific. It is different in northern hemisphere, different in southern hemisphere. So the vaccine that we are currently using for influenza, it's a quadrivalent egg-based vaccine. We can also have a recombinant cell-based cell or recombinant based influenza vaccine. The strains that we are using in 2020, that can be your MCQ. What are the strains in the influenza vaccine? We are using a Guangdong, Hong Kong, Washington and Phuket strain, 4 strains quadrivalent vaccine, 2020 vaccine. We can also have, apart from the quadrivalent vaccine, we can also have a trivalent vaccine. The trivalent vaccine could be of further 2 types. We can have a high dose inactivated vaccine, or we can have adjuvanted inactivated influenza vaccine. This trivalent vaccine can be for age more than 65 years. And it is also given for immunocompromised status patients. In certain high-risk cases, we might give trivalent instead of the quadrivalent. And of course, we have live attenuated nasal vaccine, which has its own limitation. So that's about influenza. Let us talk about the next topic, topic number 8, that is measles. Measles, we all should be knowing this by heart now, that the incubation period for measles is 10 to 14 days. The period of communicability is 4 days before the rash, and then there is rash, and then 4 days after the rash. So 4 days before rash, and then 4 days after the rash, there's the period of communicability, incubation period. And then talking about most common, mark the words, most common associated feature in measles. Measles is what? Fever and rash. So most common associated feature in measles is diarrhea. Whereas the most common or the most dreaded or the most common complication leading to death in measles, that is pneumonia. The most frequent complication is otitis media. The most frequent complication is otitis media, and of course the most dreaded complication is subacute sclerosing panencephalitis or meningoencephalitis. The vaccine that we use for measles is Edmonston-Zagreb freeze-dried vaccine. Now, point over here that you should be noting is that sometimes in certain situations we also give a measles zero dose vaccine. What is this measles zero dose vaccine? This measles zero dose vaccine is given usually around 6 months to 9 months of age. It can be given during a measles outbreak. It can be given during campaigns in settings with high risk cases. It can be given for people who are refugees or people in conflict zones. In high risk cases who are contracting measles and known contacts are there, infants traveling to countries with measles outbreak, or infants who are HIV exposed. In those cases, mark the words, in these high risk cases we can give the measles zero dose. Now, whenever we are giving the measles zero dose, apart from the measles zero dose, we also give the measles 1 and the measles 2. So these have to be given at the scheduled times. So measles 1 will be given at 9 months, provided there is a gap of 4 weeks between the zero dose vaccine and the first vaccine. So never we do that. If in case we are giving zero dose, that doesn't mean that we're not giving measles 1. We are going to give measles 1 with 4 weeks gaps, and then we are going to give the measles 2 also. Again, many times people ask us, like, what are the contraindications to measles vaccine? Please remember, the contraindication to measles vaccine is nothing very special. It is same. It is severe immunocompromised status, acute illness with acute medical care is required, HIV cases, and females who are pregnant because it's a live vaccine. Breastfeeding is not a contraindication for measles containing vaccine. The next update that we have in line is point number 9 about the rabies update 2019. So as far as this update is concerned, we have 3 prophylaxis: post-exposure prophylaxis, pre-exposure prophylaxis, and re-exposure prophylaxis. For the post-exposure prophylaxis, we can have 2 regimes. We can have a thigh regime, that is intradermal regime, or we can have a SN regime, which is the intramuscular regime. In the intradermal regime, we are giving on day 0, day 3, day 7, and day 28. So we are giving 2 doses on each day, 2, 2, 2, and then 2. So this is what is intradermal regime, day 0, 3, 7, 28, 2 doses, and number of visits would be 4 visits. Whereas on the other hand, the SN schedule is 0, 3, 7, and then there is added on 14 day also. So you have 1 on 0, 3, 7, 14, and then 28. So this is intramuscular injections, 1 dose per visit, and 5 visits will be there, intramuscular injection, and day 0, 3, 7, 14, and 28. These are the 2 schedules for post-exposure prophylaxis. Pre-exposure is simple. It is day 0, 7, and day 21 or 28, whatever day we choose, depending on the vaccine, depending on the availability. So we are giving either 0.1 ml intradermal, or we are giving one full entire vaccine for intramuscular dose, 0, 7, and 21, 28. In case it is a re-exposure prophylaxis, that is after the pre-exposure prophylaxis, in case there is animal bite, or in case after post-exposure prophylaxis there is animal bite, in either cases we need to give the re-exposure prophylaxis. Re-exposure prophylaxis would be 0.1 ml intradermal dose or one full vaccine vial on day 0 and day 3. So 2 visits only, 2 vaccines would be, 2 doses would be there, 1 dose on each day. That is for re-exposure prophylaxis. Next in line, we have point number 10, that is the National Program for Control of Blindness and Visual Impairment update. So this program was started in year 1976, NPCB program, and it was updated in year 2016-17 by calling it as National Program for Control of Blindness and Visual Impairment. This word is relatively new. So according to this program, you need to remember just 2 things. One is, what is the definition of blindness? The blindness is categorized as presenting visual acuity of less than 3/60 in the better eye with available correction. So whatever available correction, earlier it was with the best possible correction, but now it is taken as presenting visual acuity of less than 3/60 with the available correction. Next is, what are the targets of the program? The target of the program, the target of the NPCB program is to have blindness level less than 0.3% in the community. So the current blindness program, they had done a national survey on blindness. They came up that the total percentage of blindness in across the country is 0.36. The blindness prevalence in age more than 50 years, that is quite high, that is 1.99, and visual impairment in all the ages group is also 2.55. The major cause of blindness in any age group, major cause of blindness in any age group is cataract, that is 66%, followed by non-trachomatous corneal opacity 7.4, cataract complication 7.2, other posterior segment as 5.9, and glaucoma as 5.5. If you talk about the age category, specific age category 0 to 50 years, in those cases the blindness was mostly by corneal opacity. So for the MCQ exam, you have to remember two things. What is the target of blindness? The target of blindness is 0.3. The prevalence, current prevalence of blindness is 0.36. The major cause of blindness in 0 to 49 years, that is 38%, is corneal opacity, whereas the most common cause of blindness across in all the ages, that is cataract. So this is kind of update for you from NPCB. Next is point number 11 regarding the cancer registry program. If you talk about the cancer epidemiology, there are two problems. One is you have different types of data. One is a Globocon data, and then you have a cancer registry program data. Cancer registry program has they gave us the report in 2020, but the data that they took up was 2015-16 data. I'm not saying that that is old data, but that's kind of a vintage data you're showing in 2020. And the data that is there, that gives us very good insight about the cancer epidemiology in our country from the cancer registry program. But all said and done, it's a vintage old data. What we have from Globocon is a year 2020 data. So finally, for students who are getting confused, sir, which data to remember, please remember that Globocon data is more kind of a relatively newer data and authentic data. Now in Globocon data, again, you have two different problems. One is, would you like to remember the Indian data, or you would like to remember the world data? So world data is first most common cancer in the world is breast cancer, followed by lung cancer, followed by colorectal cancer. That is for the world. I think that you're going to give an Indian exam, so why not to remember the Indian Globocon data? So that brings us to the end of the story about the complication or the controversies in data and the cancer, that what data you want to remember. I would suggest you to remember the Indian data from the Globocon 2020 data. So the Indian data shows you that the most common cancer in India, that is the breast cancer, followed by lip oral cancer, followed by cervix uterine cancer. If you look at the data from the Globocon also, it tells you that the most common cancer is the breast cancer, 25.8%, not percent, it is 25.8 cancer incidence per 1 lakh population. Then you have a lip oral cancer, 14.8 in males and 4.6 in females. So the orange one is for females and the blue colored thing is for males. And then you have cervix uterine, of course, in females, that is 18. So the most common cancers, out of the most common cancer, two cancers are female cancers, and then you have a lip oral, which is of course in males and females. And these are the most common cancers in India as per the Globocon 2020 data. If you talk about the mortalities from data, the most common cancer causing deaths is again unfortunately a female cancer, that is breast cancer, and second number in line is again a female cancer, that is cervix uterine cancer. These are the two most common cancers causing death in our country from cancer related deaths. The third cancer to cause deaths is lip oral cavity. So all said and done, I think this is what is important for your MCQ exam. You need to just remember this, that what is the most common cancer in India. That is overall it is said that the breast cancer, followed by lip oral, followed by cervix uterine, that is the most common cancer. If you talk about the cancer registry program, the cancer registry program says that lung cancer, mouth cancer, stomach and esophagus were the most common cancer in men, and breast and cervix uterine were the most common cancer in females, which is of course in line with the Globocon data. But talking about the numbers, I think Globocon data is much better. Why I am saying about the Globocon data? Because the Part 26th edition also, The Park 26th edition also takes into account the Globocon data, and they have shown the same numbers from the Globocon side. So that's what you would like to remember. And the next one is point number 11. We are going to talk about slightly bigger topic, that is the Mother and Child Health Updates RMNCH program. The first update is regarding a new program, that is the Suman program. Suman stands for Surakshit Matritva Ashwasan Scheme. It is an initiative for zero preventable maternal and newborn deaths. We want to have free ANC delivery and postnatal care for the mother. We also want to have free treatment for the children who are sick newborns or sick neonates. So along with this, in the Suman scheme, there is also a service guarantee component where the service provider will give a guarantee on the quality of the services which are being provided, and that the client should get a decent amount of quality care with dignity. So that is what the Suman scheme is all about. Next in line, we have couple of 5-6 new initiatives under the RMNCH program, or the RCH, or the Mother and Child Health program. The first is Lakshya. Lakshya stands for Labor Room Quality Improvement Initiative. This Lakshya program, the logo you can see is like this. So you need to remember this program, this logo, that is the Lakshya program logo, and it is for quality in terms of both the person who's doing, the technique they are using, and the instruments or the devices should be sanitized and they should be good quality. So it all talks about the labor room quality improvement initiatives. Next is lactational management centers. It is to improve breastfeeding or promote breastfeeding. So it is also to promote milk donors, so milk donation can be happening, and the way to store milk, to express milk, this all is done at lactational management centers. Pradhan Mantri Surakshit Matritva Abhiyan, it's a relatively new program and very important program. We have Pradhan Mantri Surakshit Matritva Abhiyan. Look at the logo, this is important. So in the logo itself, you can see that 9th of every month, we have dedicated to the ANC females. The ANCs will come to the PMSMA, that is Pradhan Mantri Surakshit Matritva Abhiyan, empaneled hospitals or healthcare facilities or nursing homes, and there they will be getting ANC care. The ANC care will be triaged based on green sticker, red, blue or yellow. So depending on the status of the mother, so green, red, blue or yellow. Yellow depends, yellow is for comorbid conditions like hypothyroidism, like diabetes. Blue is for pregnancy induced hypertension. Red is for high risk pregnancy, and green sticker for no risk factor detected. This is to have a good quality ANC care for all the females in our country. Next is Mother's Absolute Affection. So this is the logo for Pradhan Mantri Surakshit Abhiyan, Matritva Abhiyan, and then we have this logo is for Ma. Ma stands for Mother's Absolute Affection. It is to promote breastfeeding in India. Next in line is Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana. It is to give cash incentive. So total we are giving 5,000 rupees. In this 5,000, we are giving 1,000 at the first stage of registration. When the female registers herself for this Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, the female will get 1,000. Then the female will get 2,000 rupees additional. When after 6 months of 6th month of pregnancy, and at least there should be at least one ANC to be done completed by the female, and then she will get again another bout of 2,000 rupees. This is after the child gets the BCG vaccine done, the DPT vaccine done, not the full schedule, at least one dose of BCG, DPT and hepatitis B vaccine is done. And at that point, so technically after 6 weeks are over for the child, at that point the female gets another 2,000. So total we are giving 5,000 rupees cash incentive under this Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana. Then we have couple of questions on Mission Parivar Vikas. So Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, before I switch to Mission Parivar Vikas, you can just have a look at the logo. So Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, Lakshya program, then you have the Matritva Ashwasan, and then you have our Ma program. Now coming to the Mission Parivar Vikas. So there are a couple of new things which are happening in the family planning program. 5 things you need to remember. One thing is that there is home delivery of the contraceptive. Who is going to give the home delivery? That is by the ASHA workers. The ASHA workers will get rupees 1 for 3 condom packet, 2 for 1 tablet pack of emergency contraceptive pill. Which is the emergency contraceptive pill that we are using? We are using Easy Pill, or we are using iPill. The Easy Pill or the iPill is it's an emergency contraceptive pill. It contains levonorgestrel at the dose of how much? 1.5 milligram single tablet. So for that tablet, the Asha will get 2 rupees, or she will get 1 rupee for 3 condom pack. This is home delivery. Next is Asha workers will also be given incentive for delaying the pregnancy. So in case after marriage, the female gets pregnant after 2 years after marriage, the Asha will get 500. If there is spacing of 3 years between first baby, second baby, again 500. In case the female opts for permanent family planning method, then the Asha gets 1000. So you have 500, 500, 1000. Can you remember this? So this can be your potential MCQs. Next is Government of India also has launched short-term IUD into the program, that is the Copper T 375. It is a multi-load device. It is applicable for 3 to 5 years. Copper T 375 applicable for 3 to 5 years. It is a short-term IUD. The current IUD that we have is a Copper T 380. This is applicable for 10 years. Next is postpartum IUCD insertion to be done within 24 hours after delivery. We also have a pregnancy testing kits called as NISJ kits. Don't get confused. I actually get confused. That's why I'm saying don't get confused. I get confused between NICJ TB and NISJ is a pregnancy testing kit. NISJ for pregnancy and NICJ for tuberculosis. Then you have Mission Parivar Vikas, that is a special program for meeting the unmet needs in family planning. So under the Mission Parivar Vikas, all the females who are age group 15 to 45, they can register for their contraceptive needs, and there is new contraceptive in this basket. We have Chaya, that is Centroman. We also have Antra. We have Chaya, that is Centroman. We also have Antra, which is medroxyprogesterone acetate. Then we have progesterone only pills. So these all are under the new program, that is Mission Parivar Vikas. Under this Mission Parivar Vikas, we also have a fixed day static approach to conduct sterilizations or contraceptive approaches. District hospital twice weekly, sub-district hospital weekly, CHC will do it fortnightly, and PHC will be doing it on monthly basis. So that's how this Mission Parivar Vikas is working. And please remember, anything out of this can be your MCQ. Next is point number 14, coming to some of the visits. Very frequently you get this question on visits. So it's a very frequently asked doubt as well, visits. So you have ANC visits, PNC visits, and some of the home-based care visits. ANC visits, there are how many visits are there? 4 visits. First within 12 weeks, 14, 26 weeks, 28 to 34 weeks, 36 weeks till term. So please remember these dates: 12 weeks, 14, 26, 28, 34 and 36 weeks. Next is for the PNC. The PNC visits are again 4 visits. First day of delivery, first day, third day, 7th day, and 42 days or 6 weeks after delivery. Do not confuse the PNC visits with the home-based neonatal care, newborn care program, or the home-based care for the young child program. In the home-based newborn care also we are doing visits, and the HBYC also we are doing visits. So let us have a look at what all visits you are doing in the HBNC program. Don't confuse ANC with PNC with HBNC. In the HBNC, home-based neonatal care program, in this home-based neonatal care program, we are giving visits by the ASHA workers on 3rd day, 7th day, 14th day, 21, 28 and 42 days. So 3rd day, then every 7th day, 7 day, 14, 21, 28 and 42 days, the ASHA worker is going to their home. They will give support to the mother and newborn in terms of immunization, breastfeeding, care of the baby, feeding of the baby, everything. Next is care of the young child at home. That is a home-based care of the young child. So this program, that is care of the young child at home, the ASHA worker, same ASHA worker is going to visit at 3 months, Every 3 months she's going to go. 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and 15 months. So can you understand that there are different visits? You have ANC visits, you have PNC visits, you have HBNC, home-based newborn care visits, and then you have HBYC, home-based care for young child. So these all different visits you have to remember, and don't get confused in your exam. I would also like to point out that in case in a home-based newborn care, in case this was a home-based delivery, in case it is a home-based delivery, then we add another visit on day of birth. On day of birth of the baby, you add another visit in case it is home-based. In case it is cesarean section, in that case in cesarean section, third day visit is minus. So just pause the video, go back and look at the ANC visit, PNC visit, HBNC visit, and HBYC visits once again. That may be asked in your exam. Let us move to the topic number 15. That is the Anemia Mukta Bharat program. Anemia Mukta Bharat program is a 6x6x6 initiative. You have 6 beneficiaries, 6 interventions, and 6 institutional mechanisms. Out of all this, you don't want to remember each and everything, but at least make sure that you remember the iron and the folic acid doses. You should be remembering at least the iron and the folic acid doses. So for all children who are age group 6 to 59 months, 6 months to 5 years, to these children 6 months to 5 years, we are giving 20 milligram of iron and only 100 micrograms of folic acid, and this is given as bi-weekly. It is given as liquid bottle with auto dispenser. Done. So for all children who are age group 5 to 9 years, 5 to 9 years, till 5 years it is bi-weekly liquid. 5 to 9 years, 45 milligram of iron and 400 microgram of folic acid given as weekly in a pink color tablet. These are sugar coated pink color tablets. In all adolescent girls who are teenager girls, age group 10 to 19 years, from the school, outside the school, and all the boys who are attending school 10 to 19 years, we are also giving them 60 milligrams. We are also giving them 60 milligram of iron with 500 microgram of folic acid weekly base. This is a blue color tablet, sugar coated tablet. And all the females who are pregnant, to them we are giving pregnant females or non-pregnant females age more than 15 years or 20 years, 49 years under the Mission Parivar Vikas. We are giving them 60 milligram of elemental iron with 500 micrograms of folic acid given on weekly basis for non-pregnant females and daily basis for pregnant females. These are red color tablet. These are red color tablet, and these are to be given on daily basis to all the pregnant females. The pregnant females will start from 4th month in pregnancy, continue through the pregnancy for 6 months. Like after they start from 4th month, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th. So for 6 months within pregnancy, and then during lactation they will again continue for 6 months. So total they'll take, the pregnant female will take for 1 year iron folic acid under this Anemia Mukta Bharat program. Talking about the deworming system. The deworming system, you just need to remember that we are giving, one thing is that we are giving biannual, twice a year, biannual albendazole. What we are giving? We are giving albendazole. And what is the dose? The dose is 400 milligram to all children who are age more than 2 years. So age more than 2 years 400, age less than 2 years, 1 year to 2 years, it is 200 half tablet. Otherwise just remember this, that it is biannual, given across the country 2 times a year. It is given on 10th of February and 10th of August every year. These are known as the deworming days as well. Next is point number 16, that is Rashtriya Bal Swasthya Karyagram. 2 MCQs on this. What is a Bal? Bal is a person, is a child who is a Bal. Balak is a Balak. So 0 till 18 years. So it includes the adolescent children, it includes infants, it includes children. So for these Rashtriya Bal Swasthya Karyagram, we are doing 4 Ds. We are checking for defects, developmental delays, disease of childhood and deficiencies. So technically this is screening for diseases or disorders. So technically we are just screening the child for health related information, and this whole program is Rashtriya Bal Swasthya Karyagram. Coming to point number 17, very important point about this severe acute malnourished child. So in case you're talking about the severe acute malnourished child, the criteria is that in case the mid upper arm circumference is less than 11.5 or 115 millimeters, In case the child is low weight for age, low weight for height, sorry. So please repeat with me. In case the child is low weight for height, low weight for height, low weight for height for less than -3 standard deviation, or in case there is bilateral bipedal edema or there is nutritional edema, in those cases, in all these three criteria should be fitting, and this is what is categorized as SAM child, severe acute malnourished child. So it's important, either you do it from pediatrics or you do it from community medicine. Of course, it's better and more deeply done in pediatrics, but from the public health perspective, what the government of India is doing, you should be knowing about the SNCUs, about the FBNC, facility based newborn care for severe acute malnourishment children. What are we doing? So under the FBNC program, we have something called as the nutritional rehabilitation centers. Nutritional rehabilitation centers in the, so whenever we get a SAM child, we are going to give some diet at the NRCs. The diet would be a F75 diet, that is the starter diet, that is given during the stabilization phase. The F75 diet contains 75 kilocalories and it contains how much protein? Very less protein, that is 0.9 gram of protein. Once the child is stabilized, the electrolytes are okay, and the child is starting to come back to the normal metabolic functions, then we shift over the child to the transition phase. In the transition phase, we are going to give to the child the F100 diet. The F100, common sense, is 100 calories and it has 3 times the protein. It has 2.9 grams of protein and good amount of lactose also. So just remember, in NRC, Nutritional Rehabilitation Center, when the child comes, we start them on stabilization phase. In stabilization phase, we start with the starter diet. Then we put the child to a transition phase. In the transition phase, it is the catch-up diet. And then once the child is fine, the child is doing good, then we shift over the child to a maintenance or a rehabilitation phase where the child is going to get a healthy diet, home-based healthy diet. So F75 starter diet, F100 is later on transition phase diet. Next in line, point number 18, this is an update again. So we have a new program called as INSPIRE. INSPIRE, it's an acronym. It stands for Implementation and Enforcement of Laws, Norms and Values, Safe Environment, Parent and Caregiver Support, Income and Economic Strengthening, Response and Support Services, Education and Life Skills. INSPIRE. It is to stop abuse and child violence. It is to stop abuse and child violence, that is INSPIRE. It is a program launched by the UNICEF, United Nations International Children Emergency Fund, according to the SDG target 16.2, to end abuse, exploitation and trafficking and torture of all forms to children. So now I think we have covered most of the points you need to remember from your child and the mother programs, and now we move over to the point number 19, topic number 19, that is immunization. Couple of things you need to know in immunization. MCQ number 1 in immunization, that what is intensified mission Indradhanush 3.0. Under the intensified mission Indradhanush 3.0, we want to have more than 95% coverage. We want to have approximately 100% immunization coverage. So under this intensified mission Indradhanush 3.0, it was launched in year 2021 only. What is the schedule we are following? We are following this particular schedule, what you're seeing on your screen right now. So we are giving the BCG vaccine, we are giving the OPV vaccines, we are giving the hepatitis B bird dose, OPV1, Penta1, and so on and so forth. MCQs on this. How many total diseases can you see? We can see 12 diseases under this program. Under these 12 diseases, 10 diseases are nationally, and there are 2 diseases which are at subnational level. What do we mean by this? We mean simple, that Japanese encephalitis is only given in JE endemic districts. So it is given in region specific. Pneumococcal conjugate vaccine, it is a very expensive vaccine and it has not been launched pan-India. Very few states and districts are using PCV into their schedule. But yes, 10 diseases, 10 vaccine preventable diseases, diphtheria, polio, tetanus, and pertussis, measles, rubella, severe TB, rubella, rotavirus infection, hepatitis B and H influenza B. These are the 10 diseases under this program. Next is, very frequently you are also being asked what are the upper limits of these vaccines. Please note that OPV can be given till 5 years, alongside measles can be given till 5 years, DPT can be given till 7 years, and Japanese encephalitis can be given till 15 years. So just remember OPV, DPT, measles and Japanese encephalitis. Now there is a catch in the other vaccines. The BCG vaccine, the rotavirus vaccine, the pneumococcal conjugate vaccine, the IPV, inactivated poliovirus vaccine, and the pentavalent vaccine, they can be given only till 1 year. So the catch is that in case try to understand that in case the child is getting a pentavalent one, the child has taken pentavalent 1 and PCV 1 and FIP 1 and OPV 1, and now the child comes at maybe 14 weeks or sometime later for rotavirus. Will we start rotavirus? Answer is no, rotavirus will not be started. In case the child has taken only few of the vaccine, then only those vaccine will be carried on in the schedule. In case the vaccine were not started till 1 year, then we are not starting these vaccines. But in case they had been started, whatever has been started should be completed. So just remember this small rules for the unimmunized child. Along with this, you should also know that the hepatitis B birth dose, it can be given till what time? It can be given only till 24 hours after birth. So hepatitis B, the birth vaccine, only the birth dose, that can be given till 24 hours, and the OPV 0, that is also given at birth only. OPV zeros can be given only till 15 days. So after that you shift over to the next schedule. So just remember the upper age limit for these particular vaccine. Next is very important, again very frequently asked question, that during the 6 months and 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 14 weeks child, more than one vaccine is to be given on the same day. Is there a sequence? Answer is yes, of course there is a sequence. So the different vaccines as per the schedule we are going to give. So the sequence is that all the vaccines which are to be taken orally, like OPV vaccine, rotavirus vaccine and vitamin A supplements, these have to be given first. The vaccine which is causing very discomfort to the child, like the pentavalent vaccine, you know that the child will start crying, unconsolable cry, very huge cry after the pentavalent vaccine. This is given in the last, and then in the middle the following order is followed. So please remember, first is the drinking thing, and in the last is the crying thing, that is the pentavalent. So this is the schedule you need to follow. Next is point number 20, that is the topic number 20, that is some things about the cold chain. So in cold chain you should be remembering two important things, that what are the freeze sensitive vaccine and what are the heat sensitive vaccine. The vaccines which are freeze sensitive, which are more towards me, like you can see that this hepatitis, you can see the TT vaccine, the DT vaccine, you can see the HPV vaccine, human papillomavirus vaccine, you can see the pentavalent and the hexavalent. These all are more towards my side, towards me, and these vaccines are what are the freeze sensitive. They are scared of getting frozen, and these vaccines are what are freeze sensitive vaccine. The vaccines which are more towards top, these vaccines are the heat sensitive vaccine. So which vaccine is most heat sensitive? Please note that the varicella zoster and the OPV vaccine, these are more heat sensitive, but beyond this we also have a reconstituted BCG vaccine which is a heat sensitive vaccine. The free sensitive vaccine you can note down is hepatitis B, DPT, DT and the TT vaccines. IPV vaccine, inactivated polio vaccine, it is both heat sensitive and it is also freeze sensitive. Whereas vaccine which is HIB vaccine, like HIB, that is H influenza B vaccine, it is not freeze sensitive but not heat sensitive, also mildly heat sensitive. So depending on this you can remember, but for your MCQ exam I would like you to remember at least this: hepatitis B is freeze sensitive, reconstituted measles, varicella zoster and OPV, these are heat sensitive. And based on this only you keep the things in the ILR stands for ice lined refrigerator, and the top level at the upper side, in the top side or in the upper side, you keep the vaccines which are not very like heat sensitive. You keep the vaccines like hepatitis B, you keep the vaccines like pentavalent, like DPT, TT, and in the bottom of the ILR, we keep the vaccines which are very sensitive to heat, like the poliovirus vaccines or the measles vaccine. So these are the vaccines which you should be keeping in the ILR. Next is topic number 21, newer initiative in healthcare. I think now the easy stuff starts. What is Amrit? Amrit pharmacies are launched in India. We have affordable medicines. Amrit is an acronym. It stands for affordable medicines and reliable implants for treatment. So in this, we have capping of the cost of an implant, and we have to take care of the quality and the cost of the implant, and that is being controlled now. So in these pharmacies called as Amrit pharmacies. Next is what is PMSSY, Pradhan Mantri Swasthya Suraksha Yojana. Under this program, we had to set up tertiary care institutes like the AIMS Institute across the country. So it is to provide aims like healthcare across the country. So no more number of AIMS institutes were established under the PMSSY. Next is Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. That is what is the Ayushman Bharat. It is one of the biggest or the largest health insurance scheme, up to 5 lakh rupees per family without any cap. No limit of age, gender, type of disease, or members of the family. It was applicable. In fact, it has increased now. It was applicable. It was made for 10 crore families, taking a family size of 5 per family. So it is for 50 crore population will be benefited with insurance, health insurance cover up to 5 lakh rupees per family per year. Next is what is Poshan Abhiyan. Poshan again is an acronym. It stands for Pradhan Mantri Overarching Scheme for Holistic Nutrition. In this, primarily we are taking care of stunting and anemia, two things. So the targets for this Poshan Abhiyan, you can look at the logo as well. The targets of this Poshan Abhiyan, that is to decrease stunting. That is to decrease stunting, undernutrition, underweight, whatever it is. To decrease stunting or undernutrition by how much per year? 2% per year. And to decrease anemia among girls, among children, among somebody, how much? By 3% per year. You need to remember this for your exam. To decrease stunting or undernutrition or low birth weight or underweight, low birth weight also, right? So low birth weight, underweight or undernutrition by 2%, to decrease anemia by 3%. This program was launched in 2017 with a target to be finished by 2020, but it has of course been increased, and the Poshan Abhiyan stands there it is as it is. Next in line we have is Jai Vigyan Mission. Jai Vigyan Mission, please remember, is for finding out the rheumatic fever prevalence in our country. Along with rheumatic fever prevalence, studies to be conducted for streptococcal infection prevalence, deeper understanding of the pathology of rheumatic heart disease and the rheumatic fevers, and vaccine development, because it's a bacterial infection, the vaccine development for rheumatic heart disease. This is what is a Jai Vigyan Mission. Then is a Vayoshri Yojana. Vayoshri Yojana is for older population, safeguarding the health of older population. So these are a couple of the updates from the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Point number 22. Some of the confusing words. So you look at this person, it's like holy confused. Some of the confusing words. What's the difference between Kayakalp, Nirmal Gram and Swachh Bharat? Kayakalp, it is an award for a hospital to keep its cleanliness and sanitation in place. Of course, that would require more staff, more resources, and good administration by the hospital, but that's what the award is for. Nirmal Gram is on the same principle. Nirmal Gram is for a gram, that is for a village level, to have safe water supply, good cleanliness and sanitation, no open air defecation. In those cases, we are giving Nirmal Gram awards. So we have Kayakalp awards for hospital. On the same principle, we have Nirmal Gram awards for the villages. Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, that's I think we all know it's a big abhiyan. MCQ over here which can be asked is, it is for what? It is for solid waste management in our country. Don't think it is for sanitation or defecation. Nah. Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, beta, is for solid waste management. Again, confusing words would be Ujjwala scheme, and Ujala scheme. Ujala means light up. So Ujala is simple. Ujala means to light up. Just remember bulb. Ujjwala Ujwal means something to come up, to fire, to light up. So just remember safer fuels. Ujjavala is a scheme for prevention of trafficking. So technically for trafficking and child abuse or human trafficking, you need to remember two updates. One is Inspire. We did that long time before for SDG goals. As per the SDG goals targets, we wanted to have to stop the child trafficking and child abuse. That was Inspire. And also for the SDG goal to have a safe community, we also have Ujjavala scheme. It is for preventing trafficking and rescue and rehabilitation and reintegration of the victims of trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation. Again, in line, we also have sometimes confusion for Indradhanush. What is Indradhanush? Mission Indradhanush, we all know, is for vaccines. Then we also have something called as Indradhanush scheme. This is under the ESI program. In the ESI program, you have an Indradhanush scheme. Under the scheme, Indradhanush, 7 colors, rainbow. So you were going to have 7 bedsheet of different colors for 7 days under the ESI hospital scheme. So just remember, these are sometimes confusing words. And now the next in line is point number 23. We are going to talk about nutrition. I know you must be so much dead tired by now by listening to all the updates, but I am telling you that NIN update is what is important. Nutrition has been almost totally revamped in last year. So last year or this year, you might get a question on this. You can see that the NIN updates, the recommended dietary allowance NIN 2020, it has been totally changed. So just 2-3 points you need to remember from this. First things first, what is the definition for reference male and a reference female? The reference male is weighing 65 kilograms and reference female is weighing 55 kilograms. The age group is 19 till 39 years. Earlier it was 20 till 39. Anyways, leave the old one stuff. The new thing you need to remember, age group for male and female, reference male, reference female, it is 19 till 39 years. The height is taken as 95th centile and the BMI, body mass index, is 18.5 to 22.9. Please remember this for me. This is the new cutoff criteria for reference male and a reference female. Coming to the recommended dietary allowance. Coming to the recommended dietary allowance for minerals. So the recommended dietary allowance for calcium, to be particular, it's kind of a typical thing that earlier we had different calcium levels for males, for females, for young, for anything. So now it is standard answer. We have single calcium level, that is 1000 milligrams per day for anybody, any gender, male, female, pregnant, whatever it is. So it is all cases we are giving 1000, except one case, that is lactation. We are giving 1200 milligram per day. That is the recommended for calcium. Next is for sodium and potassium. Sodium should be 2000 milligrams per day. Potassium should be 3500 milligrams per day. This is the recommended dietary allowance. In case you are a nerdy person, you want even more, you are hungry for more, remember, go and remember for copper and manganese as well. Otherwise, for exams, this is what you need to remember. Next is some of the more things about the recommended dietary allowance. Some of the more things in recommended dietary allowance. I know you must be getting scared by looking at this horrible table over here, but I'll try to simplify this for you. This you have already done. You already know that the male is 65, female is 55. Of course, you already know that the pregnant female is 55 plus 10 kilogram average increase during the pregnancy. If you talk about the protein, the male requirement is 54, the female is 45, just opposite, 54 and 45. And then in female, the protein requirement is plus 9.5 when it is in the second trimester. Remember, can you remember this? Plus 9.5 in the second trimester and plus 22 grams of protein will be required in the third trimester. Very important. In fact, this is one of the most important point. Most important point, that the pregnant female should require how much extra protein during first trimester? Same protein. Second trimester plus 9.5, third trimester plus 22. For lactating female, the female should be taking extra protein of 16.9 during the first 6 months of lactation and extra 13.2 during the next 6 months of lactation. Carbohydrate, I think common sense, it increases with the physiological demands of pregnancy and with lactation. Nothing to remember. Calcium, you already know it is 1000 and 1200. Magnesium, not very important for you to remember. Iron, it is considerably high during pregnancy. Again, it comes down during lactation. That's okay. Zinc, that's okay. Iodine, I would like you to remember that iodine requirement during pregnancy, it is fairly decently very high. Normally we take 150 micrograms per day, and in a pregnant state the female would be requiring 250 micrograms per day, or in lactation she would be requiring 280 micrograms per day. So vitamin C, nothing very special. Vitamin A, please, you need to remember that a normal female requires 850, pregnant requires 900, lactating requires 950. So can you remember that in a normal female she will require 850, during pregnancy it is 900, and during lactation it is 950. So that's what you need to remember for vitamin A. It can be asked in your exam. Vitamin D, nothing very special. It's same answer, 600 all the time. And folic acid, I think it is reasonably important for us to understand that a normal female it's 200 to 300 micrograms, and during pregnancy the demand increases to 570, and during lactation it is 330. So just remember whatever I have highlighted over here, those are the points that you need to remember for your exam. Apart from this, you should also know about the energy requirement. The female or the male could be sedentary worker, moderate worker, or heavy worker. So the energy is, for males it is 2100 till 3470, and for females it is 1600 till 2720. If you can remember the numbers, very nice at least, but otherwise at least remember the gross numbers, that is 1600 in females and 2100 in males. That is what is the recommended dietary allowance for energy requirement in males and females. Next, let us come to point number 24. That is about the Central Pollution Control Board. That is about the biomedical waste management. Just very fast, I'll be cruising through this topic. Yellow category, red category, white category, and blue category. We have 4 categories of biomedical waste management. Out of these categories, the yellow category, it contains anything which is infectious, like human waste, anatomical waste, animal waste, fetus waste, soiled waste, cotton, swabs, anything which is blood, infectious, anything which is infectious, that is a yellow waste. Now the confusion starts, that anything which is like expired medicines or cytotoxic drugs, they are also yellow waste. All the microbiological, biotechnological, blood bags, clinical laboratory waste is also a yellow waste. The liquid waste is also a yellow waste. Liquid could be X-ray liquid, infectious liquid, or chemical liquid. Any liquid waste is also infectious waste, or the yellow category waste. So you already know that all the infectious waste is a yellow category, but you should also know that the biotechnology waste and the drugs waste, this is also yellow category. You should also know that the liquid waste, any type, is a yellow category. Will you remember this? Next is about the red category. Anything which is plastic, anything which is rubber, anything which is tube is a red category waste. Anything like, you can have IV bottle drip sets, Euro bags, Foley's catheter, rubber gloves, syringes without needles, vacuumtainers, Ryle's tube, everything is red category. All the broken glass, all the broken, mind the word, all I'm saying is the broken glass. So broken ampules, broken glass is blue category. Empty vials, it has to be empty vials. If it is filled with vaccine, where will it go? It will go into a yellow category. Why do you get confused in this? If the vaccine is there, it's not about the glass, it's about the drug which is there in the glass, that goes to the yellow category. So you're not supposed to open it, empty it in yellow category and then glass in blue category. If you are using that vaccine, of course you have to do that. But in case it has to be disposed of as it is, you can directly put it into the yellow category. Okay. Empty vial will go into a blue category, and metallic body implants will also go into the blue category. What does white category contain? White category contains anything which is sharp. Anything which is containing sharp, like blades, scalpel, needles, suture needles, puncture needles, any needles, all the instruments, all the needle instruments, sharpie things, they go into the white category. So please remember, these are the basic principles of biomedical waste management. You don't need to get confused that where will I throw a vaccine which has the vial which has the vaccine. If it has the vaccine beta, and if the vaccine is supposed to be used and you're going to discard it, that will go into the discarded medicine yellow category. But if the vial has been used, there is no more vaccine into it, then you're supposed to discard the vial in a blue category. Can you get that? So that's pretty important for you to understand. Next, coming over to is point number 25. We are almost towards the end of the FAG session of the session. So FAG part of the session, that is sustainable development goals. Do I really need to remember all? So I don't know about you, but during my entrance exam, during my exam, in one of the exam I gave, they asked me a symbol for like, what does this symbol stand for in SDG? So I had to actually remember all the names of these symbols. Anyways, I'm not saying you to remember it, but I'm just saying to the level where the exam can fall. So what all things you don't need to remember all these 17. SDG has 17 goals. You don't need to remember all these 17 goals. It's not required. What is required is at least you remember the goal number 3. The goal number 3 is purely health related. This is the symbol for health, right? This is the symbol for health. This is the goal number 3. So it's a ECG with the heart. So the goal number 3 is for health related. So you need to remember the goal number 3. Out of the goal number 3, do I need to remember all the targets? Answer is again no. What you need to remember is I have already done in bold. Please remember MMR should be less than 70. That is the target. The neonatal mortality should be less than 12. The under 5 mortality to be less than 25. I know there is a controversy now. The neonatal mortality as per the India Newborn Action Plan. The India Newborn Action Plan from the Government of India, the neonatal mortality should be less than 10 per 1000 live births. So if you want, you can remember the INAP program targets. If you want, you can remember the SDG. I would I would suggest you to remember the neonatal mortality as per the SDG. If nothing is mentioned, if they are mentioning what is the target under the INAP, I think common sense, you need to remember the INAP target. So otherwise, INAP is not very, very big for Indian population. For India, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, we are mostly targeting the SDG target. So I think that's all for the most of the miscellaneous aspects. Moving to the point number 26, that is, we are going to talk about the healthcare system in India. As far as healthcare system in India is concerned, we have two healthcare systems. One is we have in rural areas, and we have an urban healthcare system in India, right? So if we talk about the rural healthcare system, you need to remember that at the lowest level, we have the ASHA workers, Anganwadi workers, or the village health and sanitation committee workers. Then we have a sub-center, PHC and CHC. The ASHA worker is for 1000 population. The sub-center is for 5000 population, 3500 in hilly area, tribal area, forest area, 5000 in plain area. So I'll be talking of general plain areas only. PHC is for 30,000 population in plain areas. CHC is for 100,000 population in plain areas or 1 lakh population. In a CHC, we usually have the specialist, that is medicine, surgery, gynae, pediatrics, obstetricians, and anesthesiologists and radiologists, specialists in CHC. At a PHC, we have MBBS doctors, the medical officers. The MBBS doctor, medical officer. Sub-center will have the MPWs or will have the ANMs. And ASHA level is a village level worker. Now corresponding to this same rural healthcare system, we also have a urban healthcare system. In a rural healthcare system at the village level, we had ASHA workers. That's what you had done in the rural system. In the urban system, we have the same ASHA workers called as urban ASHAs, and they are catering 1000 to 2500 population. Then in the rural setup, we had sub-centers. The sub-center was for every 5000 population. In the urban center, we have ANM center. These we call as ANM centers. The ANM centers, they are applicable for 10,000 population. In the rural setup, we had a PHC that was for 30,000 population. In the urban center, we have a urban PHC, UPHC, that is for 50,000 population. In the rural setup, we had a CHC which was for 100,000 population or 1 lakh population. In the urban setup, we have a UCHC. UCHC is for every 2.5 lakh population in all the cities and for up till 5 lakh population in the metropolitan cities. So you just need to remember these numbers. So you have a rural healthcare system and you have a urban healthcare system. Next in line that you should be remembering is what is the staff at PHC, CHC or a sub-center. In a sub-center, usually the staff is 3 to 4 staff. In a PHC, Usually the staff is in somewhere in teens, 13, 14, 15, 18. In CHCs it is in 40s, 50s. So CHC, it's a big hospital, self-functioning hospital. PHC is also a hospital but at a lower level. You also have different types of subcenters and PHCs. Subcenter type A, where there is no delivery or very less minimal deliveries. Subcenter type B, it's a major subcenter or a bigger subcenter with equipped with full-fledged delivery services. There the staff obviously has to be more. So usually typically the subcenter would be having 15 to 20 deliveries a month. What is type A PHC and what is type B PHC? Type A PHC is having lesser deliveries. How many deliveries? Usually around 20 deliveries, 15-20 deliveries a month. Whereas type B PHC, it's a more developed PHC, more bigger PHC with more than 20 deliveries per month. Apart from this, you should also know what are the norms for health personnel. Please note that for every 10,000 population, for every 10,000 population, you should have one pharmacist and one lab technician. For every 5,000 population, you should have one nurse. That means in 10,000 population, you should have two nurses, one pharmacist and one lab technician. You should also remember that for every 30,000 population in India, you need to have an health assistant. You need to remember this. This is updated 2021 norms. Updated 2021 norms also. Coming to the next point, that is topic number 27 about the committees. So please remember, BHOR committee, it is the boring committee. It gives you the essence of community medicine to be studying the public health system in India. The public health system in India was established by the BHOR committee. Mudaliar committee, they wanted to establish according to the Indian medical services system. According to the administrative services, we wanted to have an Indian medical service class as well. Chadda committee, they worked on mosquitoes. Chadda committee worked on malaria. So what they did was they stopped the malaria worker and they made a new class of worker that was called as a basic health worker. Chadda committee, please remember, Chadda committee is a basic committee, basic health worker. They formulated a basic health worker. What was the work of basic health worker? That was to integrate malaria with other programs. So the basic health worker will not do only malaria work. They will also do family planning work. They will also do vaccination, immunization work. That's what the Chadda committee proposed. But very soon the Mukherjee, which is an intelligent committee, they came over that this sort of integration at the grassroots level is not very advisable because it spoils the malaria program, it spoils other programs also. So what they did was they de-link malaria program from the family planning program. So they retained the basic health worker who was doing all other jobs except the malaria program because malaria was a big rampant problem in India. So delinking of malaria program with family planning program, and Mukherjee committee basically worked on family planning program. Mukherjee committee basically worked hard on family planning program to establish the essence of the family planning program. Then we have a Jangalwala committee. Jangalwala committee proposed equal pay for equal work, and they also proposed non-practice allowance. Kartar Singh committee, they proposed that instead of having a basic health worker, let's call these workers as a multi-purpose worker and ask them to have the knowledge of social phenomena, the cultural phenomena with health, with the environment, to combine everything on that level. So multi-purpose workers were launched by Kartar Singh committee. Srivastava committee, that is known to establish the referral mechanism in our country. They are supposed to strengthen the public health system in our country, and to give the code of conduct for reorientation of medical education. And last is the Bajaj committee. They worked on finance, they worked on human resource, and they worked on how many jobs to be taken up, what is the manpower to be done. So please remember, committees are very easy. Just say with me, BHOR committee, boring committee, they gave you PSM. Mudaliar committee is a liar committee. They were establishing the Indian medical services, which was not yet established till now. So now we hear the burn of the loss of the public health system because of we had a very friable public health system. So that's what the Mudaliar committee way back in 1962 had proposed. Next is Chadda committee. Chadda sleeps outside in a very basic requirement. And remember, basic health worker. Mukherjee committee, very intelligent committee, and they worked on family planning. They de-link malaria with family planning. Jangalwala Jangli committee, equal pay for equal work and non-practice allowance. Kartar Singh was a social worker, multi-purpose worker from Punjab. Kartar Singh, just remember this way. Srivastav committee worked on Srivastav is goddess of education. She worked on education, that is a reorientation of medical education, strengthening of public health system and referral. And Bajaj is a scooter. It's a business house. So these people, business house, will be working for finance, for human resource, for jobs. So committees are fairly easy to remember. I hope they should be easy and they should be cakewalk for you. Next, coming to some of the recent editions from Park 26th edition. The Park 26th edition, they have added a new chapter called as Essential Medicine. So under this chapter, you don't need to remember each medicine. It's like a 5 pages chapter with a lot of tables in it. So you don't need to remember all the tables. Forget about the tables. What you should be knowing, what is the difference between a counterfeit medicine, substandard medicine, falsified medicine, and unregistered medical products. Counterfeit medicine is made with an intention to cheat. So this medicine, you replace that medicine with water, with something else, with some harmful thing, that is called as a counterfeit medicine. I think we had seen example of remdesivir counterfeit medicines. What is a substandard medicine? Substandard medicine is the same medicine is there but in lesser potency. We have seen that in paracetamol. So paracetamol companies, instead of putting 500 milligram, they were putting only 50 milligram or 100 milligram of paracetamol, the chemical into it, and that is out of specification medicine of the authorized medical products, so who do not meet the quality standards. What is falsified medical products? These are deliberately or fraudulently misrepresenting the identity or source of composition and so on thing. These are false medical products. These are not to be trusted. And unregistered medical products that have not yet gone any evaluation. So based on this, in the essential drugs, you should also know what is CDESCO. CDESCO is Central Drug Standards Control Organization. This is the organization which helps you regulate the quality of the drugs and the quality mechanism of assessing these drugs. So Sugam is an online platform for licensing or approving these drugs. You can do that online. And the CDESCO, it is there in Kotla Road in Delhi, and it has 6 zonal offices with a lot of sub-zonal offices across the country. So CDESCO is basically responsible for giving approvals or permissions for conducting the clinical trials as well in our country. Apart from this, there is a small another update in Part 26th edition, that is how to prepare a 1% hypochlorite solution. I don't want to scare you with these numbers. I really don't want to scare you, but at least you should know the first and the last. The liquid bleach, the household bleach that we are using, it is usually 3.5 to 5%. So in case it is a 3.5% liquid bleach, please put 1 part of bleach to 2.5% or 2.5 parts of water, or 1 part to 4 parts of water. In case we are using bleaching powder, in that case it has 70% available chlorine, so we add 7 grams to 1 liter of water. Just you need to remember this. In case you can remember this, it's very good. Otherwise, this whole table, I don't know if the utility, but from COVID perspective, this table can be asked in your exam. Topic number 29, a little bit update about the ICD classification. The ICD classification has taken a new turn. Earlier we were using ICD-10 classification. Now we are using ICD-11 classification. ICD-11 has 3 volumes. It has Arabic numbered chapter. Earlier it was Roman chapter. Now it is Arabic chapter. Now all the chapter are 4 categories with 2 subcategories. And there are total 26 chapters with couple of new chapters which have been added. So just remember these points: 26 chapters, 4 categories with 2 subcategories, and Arabic number chapters. This is what is new thing in the ICD-11 classification. Coming to the last point, last update, that is the health indicators. Couple of health indicators you need to remember for your exam. We can talk about the PQLI, HDI at the first place. PQLI stands for Physical Quality of Life Index. Physical quality of life index, it takes into account three things. You will be taking into account the basic literacy rate, the infant mortality rate, and life expectancy at age 1 year. I don't know how you will remember, but at age 1 year, PQL1, that's how I remember PQLI, physical quality of life index at 1 year. Next is human development index. What is human development index? Human development index takes into account three things. It takes into account healthy life, knowledge, and decent standard of living. Based on these three dimensions, we are having four indicators. For your MCQ exam, you need to remember these indicators. That would be your question. The indicators are life expectancy at birth. Mind you, I told you in PQLI, we are taking life expectancy at age 1 year. In HDI, we are taking life expectancy at birth. Then we are taking expected years of schooling. We are taking expected years of schooling. Third indicator is mean years of schooling, and fourth indicator is GNI per capita, that is the gross net income per capita. So we are taking into account three things. We are taking into account income, we are taking into account school, we are taking into account the schooling years, and we are taking into account life expectancy at birth. We are taking into account three things. This is the geometric mean. HDI is a geometric mean of all these things. So the higher the HDI, the better it is. So HDI, you can see that for countries like Australia, for countries like North America, for UK, it's on a higher scale. You have much better HDIs in these countries. For as far as HDI for India is concerned, India is having a HDI index of 0.645, which is ranking at rank of 131 out of 189 countries. So the HDI is calculated based on the health, the education, income we have already discussed. The life expectancy that we are taking in HDI is 69.7 years, which is very close to the target that we have. The target of the life expectancy as per the National Health Policy is 70 years. So that's what is the target. Coming to the other portion about the disability indicators, that is the DALI, the QALY, the HALE, and the Sullivan. DALI, what is DALI? Let us say that there is a child and he goes through all around the life and to have a death at the last, right? That's what the whole life cycle is. So everybody, you and me, everyone on this earth has to go through this cycle. Now try to understand that during this whole lifespan, there could be points, there could be areas where the person is not physically or mentally able to do work. So in those areas where the person lived with some disabilities. So let us say that this person got disability at this junction and unfortunately the patient died at this age. So now this many years of life he has lost, and there are some years lived with disability. So we add the years lived with disability with the number of years lost. This will give you the DALI. It is one of the best to assess the burden of disease in community. It is the best indicator to assess the burden of disease in community. In fact, for almost all the diseases across the country, for international comparison, we are using DALI. What is this QALY? QALY means quality adjusted life years. QALY means quality adjusted life years. Let us say that there is a person who's born at age 0. Of course, everybody is born at age 0. Unfortunately, at age 30, at 30 years of age, this patient got HIV. He was diagnosed with HIV. So now his quality of life directly dropped from 100, the quality of the life dropped to 50. So it's like the person is nowhere, his job is gone, his family is gone, everything is gone, the quality of life is zoop, it goes off. So now he retains that quality of life, and by age of 60, that person dies. Now let us say you give a treatment at age 30. In case you are giving treatment at age 30, the quality of life does not come down. The patient is happy, the patient is able to function, the patient is able to perform the social requirements, and the patient has a reasonable good quality of life. And unfortunately, by age 75, the patient expires. So how many years did this patient gain because of your treatments? 15 years. Along with the 15 years, we should also count the amount of quality of life that he had gained during 30 to 60 years. So that gain in quality of life and the gain in years of numbers, that is what is quality. It talks technically in terms of monetary basis. It is basically in terms of monetary gain, in terms of the social roles that a person is going to perform once there is a good treatment. So basically what you need to remember for your exam, DALI is going to tell you about the burden of disease. The quality is going to tell you in terms of quality of life, years that a person is going to live, specifically talking in terms of the monetary terms, specifically talking in terms of how much money was spent, how much money was earned by that person. That is what is the quality adjusted life years. Next is, what is this Hale and what is this Sullivan? That's where the confusion starts now. The Hale, try to understand, Hale is an indicator of healthy life expectancy. So in this, your life expectancy, healthy life expectancy, listen to the definition. It is number of years lived in full health that a newborn can expect to live based on the current levels of ill health, mortality, and the diseases prevalent today. So it is full health that this newborn, this child was born today. How many years of good health this child will experience? It's kind of a very fantasy type of indicator. It is a very positive indicator. It is a positive indicator. Why positive? Because it looks at the brighter side. It doesn't talk about the years lived with disability. It doesn't talk about anything else. It looks at the positive side. It is a good indicator, but technically for scientific purpose, we always use burden of disease is always assessed using DALIs. Next is Sullivan. Sullivan is relevant for older population. What is Sullivan? It tells you, mark the words, listen to the words, it tells you the remaining years of life. A person, let us say a person is diagnosed with cancer at 35 years of age. So number of years he has in his life without disability or support from someone. So Sullivan is also a positive indicator. It is number of life expectancy in terms of the years which are remaining minus the duration of disability. It's a direct forward indicator about positivity, looking at, like right now, let us say I'm 55 years of age, so I have, let's say, around 20 years more to go. So out of these 20 years, how many years am I going to live without disability? That is what is Sullivan. So it is from case to case basis. It cannot be rationalized over the whole population. It is specifically relevant for older population. So just remember, for your MCQ exam, please remember Sullivan's and Hale is both for positive indicators. They both are for life years without disability. Hale is kind of a general indicator that how many years a newborn is going to live, and Sullivan is from case to case basis more relevant for older population. So with that, we come over to the last portion of this whole lecture, that is the data in PSM, some of the salient features in PSM. So data, the current data that we are using is SRS 2018 data or the United Nations 2020 data. I would suggest that SRS data is kind of more responsible and more relevant data as far as the mother and child health indicators are concerned in India. Otherwise, for all other things, we are always taking United Nations data. So what you need to remember, some of the vital stats in India, some of the vital stats or the demographic stats in India. The vital stats are: the crude birth rate is 20 per thousand. The crude death rate is 6.2 per thousand mid-year population. The annual growth rate is 0.99 according to the United Nations, and it is 1.2 as per the Park 26th edition. But I would suggest you to remember the United Nations data because that is more relevant to us. It is 2020 update. It is 0.99 is the annual growth rate. But in case you're still very hardcore fan of the Park textbook and you follow Park like anything, so please remember 1.2 is Park, but that 1.2 is based on 2015-16 estimates. Total dependency ratio has been updated in Park. I also had been updated in my lectures. It is 48.76 ratio has been updated in Park. This is the MCQs which you may get in coming time. Sex ratio in updated in Park is 899. Park 26th edition has updated it, and of course it is 940 as per the previous data that you all might be knowing. The eligible couple rate we already know is 1518. Nothing changed in that. The literacy rate. The literacy rate has been updated by the National Survey Organization 2020 that it is 77.7%, but of course in Park it's still the old one, that is 74%. HDI I've already discussed, 0.645, rank 131 out of 189 countries. Talking about the mother and child health indicators, I told you SRS looks to be more reliable except one or two points. The total fertility rate as per the SRS data is 2.2. The maternal mortality ratio is 113 per lakh live births. The infant mortality is 32 per thousand live births. As per the UNICEF data, it is 28. So if you're getting confused that why sir is saying 28 and the other sir is saying 32 and my book is saying 27, whatever, I don't know. So please remember that the United Nations data is saying 28, which is updated 2019. The SRS data is saying 32 for all general purposes and research purposes in the land of India, in the country of India. We using our own SRS data, which we think is more reliable and more authentic as far as the Indian context is concerned. The neonatal mortality rate is 23 per thousand live births. The under 5 mortality rate is 36 per thousand live births as per the SRS data. United Nations again is 34.3. But of course, the IMR 28 and 34 is as per the 2019 data from the United Nations. The perinatal mortality rate is 22 and the stillbirth rate is 5 per total births, per thousand total births. Please remember, total birth, it includes the stillbirth rate and it also includes the live births. The stillbirth rate includes the stillbirth rate and the stillbirths and the live births as the denominator. Some of the smarter things that you can do. So this is just the last part, just to cover story of the whole session. So we have already finished. Some of the smarter things that I would like you to do 1 to 2 days before the exam. Do not forget the formulas for relative risk, odds ratio, attributable risk and population attributable risk. Then there is a formula for absolute risk reduction and number needed to treat. Then there are a couple of formulas on sensitivity, specificity, positive predictive value and negative predictive value. Also, do not forget some of the formulas, important formulas, frequently asked formulas from biostats. So these are some of the smart things that you can do. Apart from this, please also do not forget some of the things from demography, like you need to know what is GFR, general fertility rate, TFR, total fertility rate, GRR, gross reproduction rate, and NRR, that is net reproduction rate. Pearls index, what is the formula for Pearls index? Please remember that the Pearls index is denominator is total women years of exposure multiplied by 100, and on the top the numerator is number of accidental pregnancies. The dependency ratio, I have already told you, it is updated for 48.7, source is CIA 2020. It has also been incorporated in your Park textbook. Then we have net protein utilization and corrected effective temperature formulas. So with that, I would like to just say that evergreen doubts, and I bet that I presume, I think that no exam will ever ask this. Please remember, I get this every day. One ASHA is for 1000 population. DALI is to assess the burden of disease. Biomedical waste management is expired medicines in yellow category, and in leprosy it is alternate day clofazimine for children. For children age 10 to 14 years, it is alternate day clofazimine. These are some of the evergreen doubts I get. You must revise before you go for your exam. Before you go for your exam, must revise, for especially for FMG exam. You must revise epidemiology, some of these study designs, environment, study about the air and the water quality parameters, entomology, you see what are the louse-borne, the tick-borne diseases, what is the difference between a louse, a mite and a tick. Screening of disease, biostats formula, I've already shown you. That's all that you need to remember for your exam. You don't need to do anything extra. MCH indicators, just remember what is general fertility rate, total fertility rate, what is IMR, what is MMR, what is under 5 mortality rates. You should know the formulas for that. The values you've already discussed. Apart from this, in case you have time. So this is just in case time is there. In case you have time. So in case you have time, please go through. This is from the part 25th edition. So because many of you won't be having the 26th edition, so part 25th edition, I have written down IMNCI and extras, like what is the treatment for pneumonia case, what is the treatment for measles case, what is the treatment for diarrhea case. Syndromic management, the kits are there, 7 kits are there, gray, green, blue, all these kits are there. SAM child criteria I have already discussed, but in Park on page 492, you will find out what are the criteria of admission to SNCU, what are special newborn care units, what are the criteria of SAM children, and so on. So just 1 2 pages are there, 1 2 paragraphs are there, just have a look at those SAM criteria. Then next is page 486, you will find the newer NHM initiative we have already discussed, but just for you to revise, you can revise those newer NHM initiative. And lastly, immunization, frequently asked questions, measles rubella vaccine, pneumococcal conjugate vaccine, 4878 to 79, 1 2 pages only. I've not mentioned anything which is extra over here. Just in case you have time, I would suggest you to revise this as well. So with that, thank you so much for watching this whole long video module. I think that this session had been useful to you. Please make sure that you make appropriate use of your time. Strike at one, strike at gold, go with full confidence. We all are with you, and all the very best. May God be with you. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Take care.